My name is Sophie Miller, and I used to believe that family was the safest place on earth. Growing up in Vermont, I thought our lives were simple and happy. We weren't rich, but our small farmhouse felt warm and alive. My mom ran a local bakery, my dad worked construction, and my older sister Lena was my best friend. She was 4 years older, confident, funny, the kind of girl who could walk into any room and own it. I worshipped her. She taught me how to braid my hair, how to lie to mom about grades, how to sneak cookies before dinner. When she got into college, the whole family celebrated like she'd won the lottery. Dad bought her a used car, Mom cried, and I promised I'd be just like her one day. For a while, everything felt perfect. But perfection is fragile. It shatters quietly, and by the time you notice, you're already bleeding. It started when Dad's company went bankrupt. One of his partners ran off with the money, leaving him in debt. Mom stopped smiling, bills piled up, and Lena started coming home less. When she did visit, she was always dressed in expensive clothes, carrying bags from brands we couldn't even pronounce. I asked how she afforded them, and she just winked and said, "You don't need to know everything, kiddo." I thought she was joking until I wasn't. One night, after a particularly bad argument between Mom and Dad, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs. The kitchen light was on. Lena was sitting with Dad, whispering, "Just sign it, it's our only way out." Dad's voice was low and shaky. "You don't understand what you're asking me to do." Lena's tone hardened. "I'm doing this for you, for all of us." I hid by the doorway, confused. The next day, Dad was gone before sunrise, and when I asked Mom where he went, she said, "He'll be back soon," but her eyes were red. He didn't come back that night, or the next. By the third day, we got a call from the police. Dad had been found dead in his car, engine running, garage door closed. They said it was suicide, but something didn't make sense. Dad wasn't the type to give up. He'd been scared, yes, but never hopeless. At the funeral, Lena didn't cry, not once. She held Mom's hand, comforted everyone, played the perfect daughter. But her eyes were cold, calculating. A week later, I overheard her on the phone saying, "It's done. The insurance cleared. Wire it to my account." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to believe it, but when I checked Dad's desk, I found a folder he'd hidden. It contained life insurance documents listing Lena as the sole beneficiary. My name and Mom's weren't on it. The signature was fresh, dated 3 days before his death. I confronted her, shaking, tears burning my eyes. "What did you do, Lena?" She didn't even flinch. "I saved this family," she said coldly. "You think bills pay themselves? Dad was drowning. I gave him a way out." I slapped her. It wasn't planned, it just happened. She grabbed my wrist, eyes like steel, and hissed, "You're too young to understand, Sophie. One day you will." I ran to Mom, screaming that Lena had something to do with Dad's death, but Mom just broke down, sobbing. "Stop it, Sophie. She's the only one helping us right now." Helping? Lena sold our father's life for money, and Mom was too broken to see it. The months that followed were a blur. Lena took over everything, Dad's accounts, the bakery, even Mom's decisions. She sold the bakery to pay debts, but somehow bought herself a condo in Boston. I stayed behind, trapped in silence, watching as the person I once loved became a stranger. By the time I turned 20, Mom had grown distant, almost afraid of me, like Lena had poisoned her mind. She kept saying things like, "You don't know how hard it is to keep a family together." I wanted to scream that the family was already gone. One day, while cleaning the attic, I found a flash drive hidden in one of Dad's toolboxes. It contained scanned documents, emails between Lena and an insurance broker. They talked about policy terms, backdated signatures, and one chilling message from her, "He'll never do it himself, but I can make sure he does." My hands shook as I wrote it over and over, my body numb. She hadn't just manipulated Dad, she had pushed him into it. I took the drive and left that night with nothing but a backpack and the truth burning in my chest. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay under her shadow. I moved to New York, found work as a caregiver, and tried to bury the past. But betrayal doesn't stay buried, it waits. 2 years later, I saw Lena on the news. She'd married a wealthy investor, opened a chain of luxury bakeries, and was hailed as a self-made entrepreneur. Her smile filled the screen, perfect and false, and I felt something inside me snap again. She had built her empire on our father's grave, on lies, and I'd stayed silent long enough. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted the truth to destroy her itself. So I made a decision. I'd go back to Vermont, I'd expose everything, but I wouldn't go as the scared little sister she left behind. I'd go as the storm she created. I returned to Vermont in the dead of winter, the roads coated in sleet and the sky the color of regret. And though 2 years had passed, the town still looked the same. Frozen smiles, shuttered shops, and silence that swallowed truth. I drove past the old bakery sign, faded and half-broken, and felt my throat tighten. But I didn't come back for nostalgia. I came back for war. I checked into a small roadside motel and spent the first night mapping every move I would make. Lena's new empire, the Miller and Grace bakery chain, had 3 stores in the state and a head office in Burlington. And according to public filings, she was CEO, married to investor Charles Grace, the kind of man who wore success like a suit and never noticed the blood under his shoes. I spent weeks observing quietly, sitting in cafes across from her flagship store, watching her laugh with customers, her face on posters that read homemade happiness. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I started gathering pieces, public records, property deeds, incorporation dates, and found the rot beneath the frosting. Every store had been financed by insurance money from Dad's death, laundered through shell companies under her husband's name. But hard proof wasn't enough. I needed the truth to bleed publicly. I contacted a journalist friend, Clara, who owed me a favor from my days in New York. She specialized in financial exposés, the kind that made powerful people panic. When I sent her the documents, she called within hours. "Sophie, if this is real, it's not just fraud, it's assisted insurance homicide." Her words hit like a storm. We worked in secret, verifying records, tracing payments, linking Lena's name to every falsified signature. Meanwhile, I found Mom, living alone in a small apartment, fragile, gray, her eyes hollowed by guilt. When she saw me, she burst into tears, saying, "I thought you hated me." I didn't answer. I asked one question. "Did you know what she did?" She shook her head violently, but the hesitation that followed told me enough. She knew something, maybe not everything, but enough to stay quiet. I left before she could speak again. Each day after, the pressure built. Clara's article was nearly ready, but we needed a final statement, a source close to Lena who could confirm the manipulation behind Dad's death. Fate handed it to me through an old friend, Paul, who used to work at the insurance firm. Over coffee, he leaned in and whispered, "Your sister visited our office weeks before your father died. She asked about suicide clauses, said it was for a client. I remember because she smiled the whole time." My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my cup. That was the missing piece. I recorded everything, documented every line, but I wasn't ready to release it yet. I wanted Lena to see it coming, to feel it creeping toward her like the winter chill. I started sending her small reminders, anonymous letters with copies of the old policy, photos of Dad's tools, a flash drive with a single message: he didn't kill himself. Each delivery hit its mark. I could tell by the news photos where her smile looked tighter, her eyes darting toward shadows. Then one night, she showed up at the motel. She didn't knock, she barged in wearing a designer coat and fury. "You think this will fix anything?" she hissed. I stared at her calm, steady.
No, I said, but it might finally make the world see who you are. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and expensive. You're pathetic, Sophie. Always were. Dad never trusted you with responsibility. Because I had a conscience, I cut in. For the first time, her mask cracked. You think you're the hero? You weren't there that night. He was going to kill himself anyway. My breath caught. You pushed him, I said. You made sure he did. Her silence was louder than any confession. I hit record on my phone without her noticing and let her rage spill. She talked about debts, desperation, and how Dad was too weak to do what needed to be done. When she finally realized what she'd said, it was too late. I ended the recording and said softly, "You just signed your own obituary." She lunged at me, but I stepped aside, letting her stumble, her fury collapsing into sobs. "I did it for Mom! I did it for us!" I walked out without another word. The next morning, Clara published the story. Headline, "Beneath the Frosting, the Dark Truth Behind Miller and Grace." Within hours, it went viral. News vans crowded the bakery, investors pulled out, and Lena's husband filed for divorce. By nightfall, state police had reopened Dad's case, citing new evidence. I watched it all unfold from my motel window, the glow of justice reflected in the glass. I thought I'd feel joy, but what came instead was quiet, a heavy, trembling kind of peace. Mom called, crying, begging me to stop, saying, "She's still your sister." I told her gently, "No, Mom, she was my sister. Now she's just a story." When the police finally arrested Lena for insurance fraud and obstruction, cameras flashed as she was led away in cuffs. She didn't look at the crowd, she looked straight at me. There was no hate, no plea, just recognition. She mouthed 2 words. "You won." But she was wrong. I didn't win. I survived. Winning implies you played the same game, but I had changed the rules entirely. As the snow fell that night, I drove to the old bridge near our house, the place where Dad used to take us fishing, and threw the flash drive into the river. The current swallowed it, just like it had swallowed the girl I used to be. I whispered into the cold air, "It's over, Dad." And for the first time since he died, I believed it.
The storm that followed was merciless. Within weeks, Lena's entire empire collapsed under the weight of her own greed. Investors vanished overnight. Employees walked out, and her name, which once sparkled across glossy magazines, became a warning whispered in every cafe. I watched it all unfold from afar, not gloating, but observing, as if watching a fire I'd once feared finally burn itself out. And though part of me wanted to look away, I couldn't, because this was the ending she had written the moment she chose money over blood. Reporters hounded her, court summons piled up, and even her husband, Charles, went public with his disgust, revealing more forged papers and hidden accounts. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, every lie dragging another into the light until nothing remained but ash. When the verdict came, I was standing outside the courthouse under a pale spring sky. The judge's words drifted through the open doors: guilty on multiple counts of insurance fraud, falsification of documents, and conspiracy to defraud. Lena collapsed into her chair, mascara streaking down her face, her shoulders trembling like the world she'd built had finally realized she didn't deserve its foundations. She turned her head then and saw me at the back of the room. For a heartbeat, her expression softened, not hatred, but something else. Regret, maybe, or relief that someone was still watching her fall. When they led her away, I didn't move. Mom didn't attend the trial. She said she couldn't bear to see one daughter testify against another. I understood, but absence is its own testimony. Afterward, I drove to Mom's apartment and found her sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched tea. "It's over," I said quietly. She looked up, tears shining, and whispered, "No, Sophie, it's never really over." I didn't argue. Some wounds don't close. They just stop bleeding. In the months that followed, the town tried to scrub away the scandal, but truth stains deeper than paint.
I sold the little farmhouse, donated part of the proceeds to a mental health foundation in Dad's name, and moved back to New York. I thought distance would dull the ache, but it didn't. It just gave it shape. I'd lie awake some nights replaying Lena's last look, that split second when she saw herself reflected in my eyes, and wonder if I'd become the very thing I hated, someone defined by what she destroyed. But life has a way of nudging you forward even when you think you're stuck in place. One afternoon, I was leaving the care facility where I worked when a young girl stopped me. She was maybe 18, trembling, holding a folder of papers, and she said, "My uncle forged my name on a loan. Everyone says there's nothing I can do." I took the folder, skimmed the first page, and felt a strange calm wash over me. "There's always something you can do," I told her. That night, I started a small advocacy group to help victims of family financial abuse. We called it Second Voice. Within a year, we'd helped dozens reclaim stolen assets and rebuild their credit. But more than that, we'd given them what I once lost, proof that silence isn't loyalty. The work didn't erase the past, but it gave it meaning. Then, almost 2 years after Lena's sentencing, I got a letter from the state prison. I knew the handwriting immediately. I opened it slowly, expecting venom, but instead it read, "Sophie, I don't expect you to answer. I just wanted you to know I think about Dad every day now. I see his face when I close my eyes. You were right. Money doesn't save anyone. If I could trade places with him, I would. Take care of Mom. Don't let this story end with hate." I folded the letter and set it on my desk. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw it away either. Maybe someday she'd deserve an answer. When her parole hearing came, I didn't attend, though part of me wanted to see how she'd changed. Instead, I stood on the same bridge where I'd thrown the flash drive years earlier, the water rushing below like time itself washing away sins. I whispered, "She's your problem now, universe," and smiled for the first time without bitterness. Weeks later, I heard she'd been released early for good behavior. She disappeared from headlines, from society, from everything. Some said she moved south. Others claimed she found religion. I didn't chase the truth. I'd had enough of chasing ghosts. What mattered was what remained. Mom and I slowly rebuilding something that looked like peace. Mornings with quiet coffee, evenings where laughter returned like a shy guest who wasn't sure it was welcome. One day, Mom handed me Dad's old photo from our last family trip, the 4 of us smiling on a beach where the water met the sky, and she said, "He'd be proud of you." For once, I believed her. I framed the photo and hung it in my office at Second Voice. Beneath it, I placed a plaque that read, "Justice doesn't mean revenge. It means remembering who you are when the world forgets." Years passed, and life softened around the edges. I bought a small house near the Hudson, planted roses like the ones Dad used to grow, and every evening I'd water them as the sun dipped low, thinking about how far I'd come from the girl who once hid in the hallway listening to whispered deals and lies. The past still visits sometimes, a flash of Lena's laughter in a crowd, a song Dad used to hum, but it no longer owns me. It's part of my story, not the headline. And sometimes, when the wind shifts, I imagine Lena somewhere far away, maybe working in some small diner, maybe anonymous for once. And I hope she's finally felt what she never understood, that peace isn't bought, it's earned. One night, as rain tapped against the window and the clock ticked softly, I took out Dad's old watch, still running after all these years. The inscription faint but legible, "Do right even when no one sees." I whispered, "I did, Dad." The second hand kept moving, steady and sure, as if answering me. In that moment, I realized I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something stronger. Clarity. My sister took everything once, our father, our home, our name. But karma had taken its turn, and I had rebuilt not just a future, but a self no one could steal. And that, I thought, as the rain turned to morning light, was the real inheritance he'd left me all along.